On how to change your oil. Basically, you need a drain pan. You can pick one of these up at an auto parts store. They're pretty cheap, $3. Gloves if you don't want to get oily. An oil filter, a container of oil, 5 quarts should do the job for most vehicles, and then a wrench. And all you have to do is remove the drain bolt, drain it into this pan, put the drain bolt back on, slide this under the oil filter, remove the oil filter, and then when you take the oil filter out, you'll notice that there is a rubber seal on the oil filter. That rubber seal should be lubricated with 1 drop of oil. All you have to do is take 1 drop of oil. You can even use the old oil that's in this pan. And just take it on your finger, rub it around the surface there, and that's all you have to do. When you screw this on, it goes 1/2 to 3/4 once it contacts the engine. And you'll know that because it spins on real easily, and then all of a sudden it stops spinning. And then all you do is 1/2 to 3/4 of a turn. Remember, if you really torque on it, you're going to have a real problem getting it off later. My oil changes don't require any oil filter wrench because I'm always the one to put this on. You don't have to torque it. It stays on just fine, 1/2 to 3/4. Then you just hand spin it and remove it. Okay, so what we're working on is a 2000 Lexus, and in order to expose the oil pan, Lexus put a little piece of plastic underneath the car. That's for fuel mileage. If you reduce the resistance, you increase the gas mileage of the car. A lot of people take that off and throw it out. I think that is wrong. I think you should use it. But it's a bunch of little 10 millimeter nuts that you have, or bolts that you have to take off all around the perimeter of that shield. If you're dealing with an older car, it won't have that. And basically, there's your oil pan. It's the big, you'll see on the bottom of your engine, big sheet metal thing on the bottom of the engine, has 1 bolt in it. Put your drain pan out. Don't put it right there like that at the edge because this is going to squirt out. So you want to make sure you get it out like that. You also don't want to put it too far because when it's completely drained, it'll start dripping. And if your pan is too far out, it'll drip and hit the ground. So you've got to just do it a little bit at a time, or a little bit closer like that. So all I'm going to do is I've got to remove that that single bolt right there. Now the tricky part is when you're doing it, and it's on the Lexus, apparently it's a 14 millimeter, so I'll be right back. Okay, so we're back. Now it's 14 millimeter, and if you look between the bolt and the oil pan, what you're going to see is a little crush washer, they call it. You can actually reuse that if you don't, really torque it on. So what I like to do is I move the pan over so I can get the wrench in, and then you just loosen it a little bit. Now the oil won't start coming out immediately unless you loosen up too much. Once you do that, the tricky part is to take that bolt out without getting oil all over you. And what I like to do is I like to do it upside down, so to speak. So you can see, there we are, the bolt. I got my hand upside down, and I'm going to pull or keep torquing on it until I can tell that there's no more threads left. And at that point, you just quickly pull it out of the way, just like that. You get a minimal amount of oil on you. Since I'm wearing gloves, it doesn't really matter. Then the next thing I do is I dry off the bolt. When you put the bolt back on, it's just like the oil filter. You don't have to really crank on it. You just kind of get used to it. You'll know when it's tight. Shouldn't be hand tight. You got to tighten it with a wrench, but you can probably, once you feel that resistance, you can go maybe a 1/16 or an 1/8 of a turn is more than enough to get this snug, and it won't fall off. If you really torque on it, you're going to have a problem taking it off next time, and if you strip it, you have a real issue there. So, sometimes you take your car in for oil changes. They do an oil change, and the guy's, rookie. He really torques on this and makes it hard for you. So once you get it off, from then on, if you do your own oil changes, you're pretty good. You can see how the flow now, instead of flowing out here, it's starting to trickle down. What I like to do is once I get towards the end when it's just doing drip, 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 I'll actually pour some good oil into the engine, and that kind of sweeps out all of the oil, and it should come out clear from that point. But that's your preference. There's just a small amount of oil in the bottom of the pan once you drain it completely. So
That's how you do the oil. And then once this is done, you screw this, you wipe it off and then screw it back in, and then, like I said, tighten it gently.